Our next guest is John Pudner. He's the executive director of Take Back Our Republic. I love that name, Take Back Our Republic. I'm surprised that when they started the organization it was even available. It's one of those things where you think someone would have already bought it for a web domain or something. Anyway, John was a speaker at the Aspen Institute Ideas Fest this year, and he was gracious enough to speak with me after his presentation and agree to be on the show. This is part of our theme, of always finding solutions to the problems of dysfunction and polarization. And I think after you hear John's interview, you're going to find that it's a terrific organization, great ideas, and if they're successful at what they do, I think we're going to have hit a home run in terms of where we're going and trying to disrupt the disruption and alleviate the polarization. So anyway, without any further ado, John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. Glad to be here.
Well, again, as I told my guests, you're quite a gentleman to agree to do this, and I appreciate your time. I know how busy you are.
No problem at all. Love it.
So you have spent the majority of your career in politics, and somewhere along the line fairly recently you decided you had to make the leap from politics to solving problems.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I'd say when I first got in politics, I thought it was a good way to solve problems, but changed over time. And but no, ran campaigns for a couple of decades every year because I worked in states like Virginia that have elections in the odd years. And so after a couple of decades since that, we had to address the actual process, not just the next election campaign.
So Take Back Our Republic is a relatively young organization, correct?
That's correct. We publicly launched in January, so we are in our first year.
Well, somewhere along the line, whether it was you or a formative group, had to kind of decide, you had kind of like a straw that broke the camel's back moment, or an aha moment, whatever you call it. So can you take us back and tell us how this came together and maybe what caused the group to form?
Sure. I think from my perspective, I launched the campaign of Dave Bratt last January, a year and a half ago, against House Majority Leader Eric Cantor. And obviously being up against big money in any race, when you're trying to run a grassroots campaign, it focused me on a couple of issues. One obviously was that Eric Cantor's majority leader was going to spend $5 million in the race. Brad ended up spending $200,000. And at one event, we finally got 200 people together for our first real fundraiser for Brad. We raised all of, I think, $15,000 in 2 months. And we had 200 people in the room, and several of them started to consider giving checks at the end. I made a big pitch. We need you to contribute in addition to knocking on doors, and stood by a door with a balloon and a basket to try to ask everyone leaving to give whatever they could. And a couple of people started to write a check and said, "Hey, now this is tax deductible, isn't it?" And I said, "Well, no, actually, political contributions aren't." And someone put away their check. And that was a real aha moment for me. I said, wow, someone will risk going to a fundraiser very close to a majority leader's house, be willing to be involved, be willing to knock on doors, but they can't give a check without having some kind of tax credit. Shouldn't we encourage them to participate? So just one of the first baby step ideas I had was, gosh, we really ought to put back the old tax credit just for your $100, $200 donors to encourage more contributions at the low end to kind of offset the big, mega givers who seem to have so much influence on our government today.
So you had that idea, and I think at the same time there was another group of people who were growing very tired with the problems with campaign finance reform, and you put this organization together. How does the organization operate? And in that sense, how do you guys make decisions? How do you set policy, and then how do you decide to implement policy?
Sure. Well, I have a great board. Mark McKinnon is our board chair, and he was one who reached out to me through a mutual person. We didn't really know each other, ironically, because we both worked back on the Bush campaign in completely different roles. He was the genius putting TV commercials together. I was out in the field in 16 states, organizing conservatives to vote for Bush. So the interesting thing is, within the Republican Party, we come from a bit different perspective. Mine was always more of a real grassroots conservative, A negative person might say Tea Party-ish before there was a Tea Party, but and Mark was certainly viewed more of a moderate on issues, particularly social issues. So, but we found we had this thing in common, which is we were really concerned that Republicans had gotten away from the idea of reforming money in politics. It was almost becoming a bad word. And so it's just neat to suddenly realize two people from a little bit different ideological background were suddenly seeing money in politics as a top and pressing issue and something that needed to be addressed. So we started to talk, and within a couple of months, this organization had been set up, and they've really, the board has let me go out and organize like I'm used to organizing. We've set up chapters in 25 states where we have an actual state coordinator, all volunteer right now. We have great office, just a couple of full-time people, but a team of 10 that works at least part-time, everything from marketing to grassroots to earned media. So it's just a great organization, and we move quick. We get a lot done every week, and I think we're building an organization quickly, and more importantly, building a lot of state organizations closer to the grassroots.
So in terms of identifying issues, your lead issue kind of goes back to what you were thinking about, of maybe getting a tax credit to help get people induced to give money. Is that still the main goal you have to get that accomplished?
That's interesting. That started as our main goal. I think we have gotten even more reaction to the concerns about foreign money getting into elections. So I'd almost say that's replaced it, because we're going out there educating, discussing these issues, and that really has people concerned. And foreign money is technically illegal in elections, but it's getting in there a couple of ways. One, campaigns now the last few years have not always required banks to verify ballot addresses on credit card contributions, and for the first time have allowed prepaid credit cards. Couple big problems with that. When you have no verification, someone can sit overseas if they want, buy up a bunch of prepaid credit cards, and literally have a room of people type bogus names in with numbers to contribute to any effort they want. So there's no way to monitor that. They just do it $200 at a time, and if it's a big enough campaign, that is never checked. Secondly, of course, it's just the lack of disclosure and the concern that raises over foreign companies giving. In particular, there was a case in Los Angeles where an international porn distribution company, of all things, put in $300,000 into a referendum. This was brought to the attention of the FEC, and the FEC stalemated and wouldn't even investigate. And I just think that's a terrible precedent. Basically, the FEC has gotten to where it's a 3-3 tie in everything, and if a Republican on the FEC commissioner proposes something, the Republicans vote against it, and vice versa. And if we're going to send the message that we're not even going to look at $300,000, from a foreign source, I think that has terrible ramifications looking ahead to all the money that's going to go through coffers in the coming year.
Now, you said it's illegal, but my understanding, and I think I got this from your website, is that a foreign corporation could set up an American subsidiary, and then that American subsidiary, because it's domesticated, they could contribute.
That's correct. So certainly, companies now, I think, have almost gotten a green light to look for ways to do things. So you can walk through and say, okay, a lawyer figured this out, and we now have a little, offshoot in America, and we're giving to them. And I won't get into all the nuances on the rules there. I mean, the money is supposed to originate in the country. It is supposed to, so in theory, you make sure those are just American dollars. In practice, I think it's very difficult to really enforce. So we set up that system, and that was just about, I think, $11-12 million the first time. But the point with all these things is once people figure out how to do them, they're going to figure out how to do them. And if you're overseas, pick your bad guy. You can pick Russia, you can pick the Mideast, you can pick anyone. You can pick someone who's just a foreign competitor to a company, an auto dealer in Asia that's not inherently bad or anti-American, but just wants an edge over American companies. And once they figure out their ways to influence elections, then you have situations where one candidate says things that seem too a little tough on a particular region, or talks about potential military intervention in an area, or anything, or or helping support American companies in a particular industry. And there's huge incentive then to flood money in through whatever third parties you can, undisclosed, from our foreign company for advantage over Americans. And so I can see why this issue has risen a bit to the top. While people tend to like the tax credit, and it actually did just poll very well in Colorado. It was they were all positive issues, but it seems people are really more concerned about the foreign money.
Now, John, full disclosure on my end, because my viewers know this, my day job is being a lobbyist, and
Right.
so I'm trying to think this through with you here. Let's say a foreign corporation hires a lobbyist in the United States, and then that particular lobbyist, let's say they batch contributions and deliver them. They're not breaking a law, but when they're walking in the door, they're really seen as that foreign entity as well. So how do you deal with that problem?
Yeah, so I do think, on lobbying laws, as you know, when you're lobbying for any kind of international outfit, and I've never done it, but I've certainly known people who did, the reporting requirements are very, very strict. I mean, a very strict accounting on the amount of time. And I'm talking federal now. Obviously, don't know the state-by-state laws, but there's a very rigid accounting so that there's great detail, and therefore any lobbying that would be for a foreign interest that's beyond just a business interest or something would have incredible scrutiny, and any lobbyist would have to be very so there's a level of accountability that is built in there. Not to say there aren't some issues, but if you set up this FEC precedent, you kind of say, well, it's fine if you flood money into a referendum, and you start being able to flood millions of dollars that's unaccounted for. Where suddenly the end result is a candidate being attacked on TV by a third party that's really funded by a foreign entity that we can't get our hands on. You can see how all the accountability you have in the lobbying domain would then be lost within the political domain.
So I'm going to think out loud with you here. When you make a contribution, you have to fill out a form. You have to give your name, the organization, blah, blah, blah. But I've never seen a box there that you could check that says none of these funds are associated with a foreign country or something. Would a box like that or something, would that be a deterrent? Would that be sufficient? Or how are we going to solve this problem?
Could be. Well, there are some real simple steps. I'll tell you one, this prepaid credit card, non-verified credit card, a very simple step would be to say that any campaign, any bank processing contributions into the campaign website has to verify the addresses. And when I first said that, I had some conservatives say, well, doesn't that create an administrative nightmare? No, that's what banks are used to doing. You've literally had candidates tell them, we do not want that step taken. We do not want a verification done. So, for example, if you try to buy something online and you type in something wrong, miss a digit on your zip code, we've all done it, you get a red box saying missing information, can't process.
Right.
So in essence, what campaigns have done is turn that off in some cases. Some campaigns say, don't do that, just process the credit card number, don't match things up. Well, once you do that, it makes it wide open to make these contributions. You just make them turn that switch back on, and you eliminate a whole easy avenue for flooding money in. So there's some very simple steps like that we can start with. Certainly some get more complicated, such as I'm concerned about this FEC case. They'll say, well, we're just saying foreign companies can give to referenda. Yeah, I don't know. Once you've set down the precedent, you're not even going to investigate them for over $300,000. I think that's a problem. So there are more complicated issues, but quickly turning off that credit card loophole is something that could be done very quickly and stop a lot of problems. And we did just poll on that question in Colorado, and that was a 59% support, 22% opposed. So we have strong support for that in the state.
And one thing I like about this issue and the solutions that you're offering here is maybe compared to your other issue, which I want to get into, is that this is a regulatory solution, not a legislative solution, right?
Yes, it could be either. You could have legislation go through saying you have to, banks have to enable this for a campaign. But yeah, I believe you could do that, the regulatory issue as well.
Well, either one's going to be difficult, but my concern a lot of times is the solutions people offer for all these campaign finance either are going to take constitutional amendments or legislation or the Supreme Court to make a change. it's not that regulatory changes are easy, but in the spectrum, they're probably more easy than the other types of solutions.
Oh, definitely the case. Absolutely. And, anyone who watches C-SPAN or even occasional newscast knows getting, any movement in Congress right now in anything is tough. So obviously you're right. The fewer hurdles we can have, the better in trying to solve, let's solve the easy things first.
Now, I had forgotten, I'm old enough that I should have remembered, but I had forgotten that there was a time when you could have a tax credit for a political contribution. And again, from your website, I guess it was started in 72 and then ended in 86. Why did it get started in 72 and then why did it get ended in 86?
It's interesting. I'm not as sure on the origin, but the idea was to encourage more average people to participate, and that's what we like about this. If everyone out there knew I can give $100 to the political cause or candidate of my choice, then and I'm getting it back, then it makes them more likely to give. Now, the second thing that does in game here is getting the candidates to pay attention to people rather than pay attention to a couple big donors in New York or Texas or wherever they're flying off to. So if suddenly every constituent you have as a member of Congress sort of has $200 in their pocket to give to whichever cause they want, you actually start paying attention to the people in your district. And we're talking real dollars here. Even with none of these incentives, small donors gave $356 million last cycle. You give them a little incentive and suddenly you've got $1 billion. And guess what? Suddenly 20,000 of your voters and constituents also are giving small dollars. Your focus as a member, as a candidate, turns very quickly back to the district and the people that you're constitutionally putting there to represent. So, a lot of people just, well, campaign finance means less money in campaigns. Well, I'm not sure that's as relevant as to where the money's coming from. And if the money's coming from your rank and file constituents, they can vote and contribute to you. You as a member are going to have a lot more trouble ignoring them.
And what I like about your solution is I think it's going to be too hard to put the genie back in the bottle in terms of all the money in the system. So what I like about what you're doing is you're kind of adding money and then you're creating a balance that doesn't exist.
Great. And a follow-up precisely to your point. Of course, a lot of reform groups have come out and said, let's throw out Citizens United. Okay, well, right now that's the law of the land. I mean, that's, if someone wants to have a scholarly legal debate on that's fine. But right now, given the rules we have, one other proposal we have is that we would like to see money come directly to candidates rather than to, kind of dark third-party sources that no one is accountable for, that gives money, that runs attack commercials without anyone knowing who's behind them, etc. One way to do this is there may be a trade-off where we up that limit on what someone can give to a member of Congress substantially beyond the basically be 2,700, with inflation adjusted. Now, up that limit in return for disclosing dark money that right now is going, because right now all the incentive is to not give to the candidate. There's a report today, I believe, in the Washington Post on 80% of some of the campaigns now, the money's all going to third parties. The problem with that is third parties can't talk to candidates. They really don't want to, but there's no accountability. So we've all heard negative commercials work. And look, we use negative commercials to attack Eric Cantor and beat him. We use negative commercials to attack a 32-year Democrat last November and beat him. They do work normally. But the one thing that holds you back on negative TV is getting a bad reputation. It was always, well, we can attack. We think they're weak on something, assuming right now it's a legitimate attack and not something ridiculous and made up. But, gosh, I also am going to look bad as a candidate for launching this attack. The problem we have now is with the third parties doing all the attacking, the candidate can say, sorry, I can't talk to them. I wish they wouldn't do that. I'm really sorry they're destroying my opponent, and walk away. If the money's coming into the campaigns, then they've got to be accountable for what they do. And it holds back a little bit on just this all-out assault with no verification in some cases, just slandering someone's personality, etc. So this is another example where when people first hear, well, we're talking about bigger checks to campaigns, some of the reform side to my left goes, oh no, more money. But to your point you just made, yeah, but the money's going into an accountable system where we're holding the candidate accountable and focusing them, and not off to some third party that we can't hold accountable for what they do.
Exactly. Now, you have something on your website, again, that I found interesting because I hadn't thought about this before. You also want to change the threshold for disclosure of contributions.
Yes, yes. And the idea, the threshold has not been adjusted for years. So, right now you give, up to $200 before you start appearing on a report. And I certainly think we could up that to at least $500. We want more disclosure on the big end, big checks. When a check's big enough that it may be transactional in nature, and that meaning I've got a group, and you can pick your bad guys, special interest group, union, corporation, pick whoever you don't like the most. I've almost got a business model where I'm going to flood $1 million into the system because I think I can get $100 million back in tax money from taxpayers, money that maybe should be going somewhere else or not being spent at all. So we want more disclosure there to stop the transactional giving, or at least to shed a light on it. But at the low end, you have a lot of people scared of giving their first check. Same reason people sometimes say, well, I don't register to vote because I might get called on jury duty, or, well, I just don't want the attention, or I don't want to get on the list. And if someone has their first pay raise to where suddenly they've got a little disposable income that they can get involved, or maybe they start their own business, and for the first time they've actually got a little money, they aren't quite on a set paycheck, and they start paying more attention to what's happening in their community, we want to encourage that first contribution, because once someone gives anything, they start to participate, they're much more likely to vote, they're much more likely to talk to neighbors about issues, you get a more involved electorate. And so we just think upping that to at least $500, or no one believes that anyone can buy a member of Congress for $500 today. Your biggest cynic doesn't believe that check is even noticeable. So, let's have, a little less disclosure, if you will, at the bottom end. I don't think is hypocritical from saying we want more disclosure on the big dollars.
So you've got these issues you're pushing. Let's talk about how you plan to get this done.
Sure. I have always done things at the grassroots level. I don't think you can start these discussions on Capitol Hill. There's a different way of thinking within the Beltway. I had actually announced Take Back Our Republic in front of Americans for Tax Reform, certainly one of the most established conservative, or you say libertarian groups in the country. Grover Norquist runs it. A lot of liberals do not like them at all. They get a lot of candidates to sign a tax pledge. I purposely wanted to go to that group and in front of 200 people who meet from conservative organizations say, look, there's several times in my life I proposed something new, and I've had conservatives in D.C. tell me it was a terrible idea, and every conservative back at home in a district tell me it was a great idea. I feel like deals are being cut in Washington, D.C., and I don't like this system, and it's got to change. It's got to become more responsive to me. It can't just be about the big corporation. It's got to be about the average person working hard out here in the state. So that's why we're going state by state. I'm actually making my first trip up to Capitol Hill on this issue next week. We purposely went a half year, me visiting one state after another, setting up these 25 state chapters. We have run surveys in all 50 states. We have media outlets have contacted us in 49 of the 50 states. I won't mention the one that we haven't found anyone in. But we want the members of Congress to go back and hear about this from constituents, and from constituents who they're used to agreeing with on other things. There's nothing wrong with a conservative member of Congress going back and having other conservatives come to a town hall meeting and say, hey, you got to do something about this money in politics. So it's going to be from the grassroots end. That's the only way to do it. That's how I've worked issues in the past. And I just think, this is about getting power back in the people's hands. And I think people out there in the district are really unified in favor of this issue, even though it's been a standstill on the Hill for some time.
So, John, one of the themes of our show is we're always trying to get our viewers active and interested in issues. You've got a great issue here. You got a great organization, and you got a great plan. How can my viewers get active if they're interested? How do they find you? How do they join?
Sure. The takeback.org We were thrilled that was still available, by the way, but just TAKEBACK.org. It's a quick sign up there. If we can at least get your email and zip code, then we let you know when we're doing things in your state. You get all the state-specific updates. Certainly, there's more on the website. There's plenty to look at. But as far as us letting you know next time we're having a state chapter meeting in your state, et cetera, and certainly for your viewers in Colorado, but I know other people see you in other areas as well. And there also is a state sign-up sheet once you're on that page. You can see what's already happening in your state. And for those who prefer to pick up a phone and dial, it's 334-329-7258 is our main office. We got a team here. Justin Hill focuses specifically on building state chapters, so you'll talk to either of us, but by phone or by takeback.org, yeah, please get in touch with us. We'd love to follow up with you.
Well, John, I always say that time flies when you're having fun. You're a great guest, and time has flown. Thank you for all your help today. Maybe we can pick this up again with you maybe about a year from now and see how you're doing and talk about some success stories.
That's great. As I sit here in 100-degree heat, I'm thankful that Aspen is a casual city, and I feel comfortable being casual here because appreciated getting a little bit of a cool down during my brief stay up there. So enjoy your wonderful spot in the world.
Thank you, John. All the best to you, and good luck.
Thank you. Bye-bye.